And if we're living through learning, we're very vulnerable to manipulation. And I want to have a quick look with you at the dark side, at the shadow. You know, it's not somewhere where we would want to reside or lower our attention, which isn't helpful. But it is important to be aware, and an awakening is becoming aware of the light and the dark, seeing things as they really are, not how we thought they were. If you are living in thoughts, living through ego, your whole perception of the world and who you are is derived from your learning, from the information you've been given. And if somebody is giving you that information, then they have an extraordinary level of power over you. They're crafting your very perception of reality. Mind control. If you are living and understanding the world through your learning, then you are no more than a robot. The solutions you arrive at will come through that learning, and you will continue to perpetuate that system. And what if that learning wasn't true? What if that perception wasn't the truth? Just a carefully crafted deception to keep you enslaved. Now, I love my reggae music. And the reason I love reggae is because it's music of our times. It's about spiritual awakening. It's about the ascent of humanity. It's all spiritual music, really. But it's also about freedom from slavery. And to the Rastafarians, that's the same thing. What they'll say is that the chains aren't here, that the chains are here. And that by freeing your mind of the deception of your perception, you find true freedom, and that they Rastafarians call Zion. It's not a place, it's a state of mind, a state of being, liberation. Did you know you lived in a slave system? And the programming starts very early on in our lives. We're kind of indoctrinated by our parents who with their very best intentions pass on their own indoctrination, their own worldview, their own values, their own way of understanding things. And it's passed on to us. And then we go to school, don't we? Now, I'm not going to pick on teachers. I've got 7 children and I've got a lot of experience with teachers. And you know what? With only 1 or 2 exceptions, they're lovely people. They do it because they care about kids and do it with the very best intentions. But they do seem to burn out and get very stressed, and it does seem to do a lot of them harm. And I suspect that's because a lot of what their indoctrination tells them to do offends something inside. I mean, what's the first thing you learn at school? What's the first thing you learn? Sit down, shut up, and do as you're told. Sit down, shut up, and do as you're told. My son was telling me that he got called to his son's school, my grandson's school, and that they suspect he's got ADHD. And when they went in to assess him, they didn't have to ask who he was. He was the one standing on the table. I get that. He's 5 years old. No, I get it's the ones sitting down that I struggle to understand. Because they're being trained to behave in a very unnatural way. Maybe the one standing on the table is the more intelligent one, who knows? Because they ain't going to fit into that. But we're trained to behave in particular ways. We're trained to put our authority outside of ourselves, to the expert, to the technocrat, to the manager. And I was having this conversation with a teacher the other day, because I think what happened over the COVID period really terrified me. You know, when I was a social worker many years ago, one of the most disturbing cases I had to work with was this case, a little girl. She was about 6 or 7. And all her life she'd been told that she was sick, that she could make other people ill, that she was diseased. And she had all sorts of tests and underwent all sorts of unnecessary procedures. And absolutely nothing wrong with this child. But the poor kid went through the most appalling time and was very psychologically damaged by this whole experience. And we unfortunately ended up having to take care proceedings for this child. My mother was acutely mentally ill, what they call Munchausen's by proxy. But isn't that what every secondary school teacher in this country did to the children in their care? When they forced them to wear masks 8 hours a day. Without one shred of scientific validation for that, as we now know, it was complete nonsense. It's in the public domain. I could have told you that at the time. Anybody with a bit of common sense could have told you that at the time. That a bit of cloth on your face with holes 5,000 times bigger than the virus it is supposed to protect you from hasn't got a cat's chance of ever doing anything. But what does it do? It separates us, doesn't it? It turns that smiley face into a threat subconsciously. When you can't see somebody's face, your body goes, that's danger. Because you read their face. You know, this is psychological manipulation. Yet every secondary school teacher in the land did that without ever questioning to the children in their care. Now, these are people who care about kids. Now, if the indoctrination could be that complete that they can get good people to behave like that, that's, to me, is quite terrifying. And I had this conversation with a teacher, and he said, well, we had to do it. Now, that always makes me smile when people say you have to do something. You don't have to do anything. You can use that word, no. It's quite powerful. You haven't got to do anything. But he really believed he had to. He really believed he did not have the power of no. That he had no authority. So complete was the indoctrination. Also, what we learn in school is instead of trusting our higher mind, our intuitive mind, I think once I got older, I'm nearly 60 now, is I kind of realising just how fucking smart I was when I was 5 or 6. There's a lot of the things that I ruled out much later on as being childish silliness are actually true. You know, I used to think that banks created money, it came out the hole in the wall. Well, they do. I knew that when I was 3, but when I was older, I got that educated out of me. But what we learn to do is we learn to give our authority away. We don't trust what we know, or even what we see with our own eyes, what we know with our own experience. We defer to the authority, to the expert. And even when we're later on in our education, we're allowed to have arguments. It's only one expert against another expert. You can only argue within that framework. So it closes the mind. And the further your education goes, the more closed it becomes. The guild of candle makers would never in a million years have conceived of the electric light bulb. In fact, you'd have been drummed out of the Guild of Candle Makers for suggesting it. That it becomes a barrier, becomes a prison in itself, where everything is then understood and interpreted through that learning. It's to the point where people can't even see patterns anymore. They can't step back from their learning because they are their learning. And might have to reject everything something that's right in front of their face because it conflicts with their learning. So once we've deferred our minds, our understanding to that learning, where the mind control is complete, is it not? If I had come up with an original idea when I was doing my social work degree, I would have failed. If I had suggested anything that challenged the orthodox, I would have been kicked out. It rewards conformity, discards anything outside of that.